Welcome to the Focus and Chill podcast, where we discuss productivity tactics that work for neurodivergent individuals.
Every episode, we interview guests with lived experience of neurodiversity who also have a solid productivity and habit game, and pass the learnings on to you, our wise and benevolent audience.
We're your hosts, Jeremy and Joey.
I'm Joey, and I coach creatives to get moving on their most ambitious projects through the power of solid habits and strong focus. I'm also a perpetual student of psychology and perpetually on a quest to a one-armed chin-up.
And I'm Jeremy, a neurospicy software developer turned startup founder, building the Focus Bear app to help people with ADHD and autism thrive at work. My cool party trick is leaving parties early so I can get to sleep in time for my 2-hour-long morning routine. The Focus and Chill podcast is brought to you by Focus Bear, a habit and productivity app that makes healthy habits and deep work the path of least resistance. If you have a tendency to check emails or scroll through Instagram first thing in the morning, but long to develop a meditation and exercise habit first thing, Focus Bear can help you. The app blocks distractions on all your devices and guides you through your habits one at a time. Throughout the day, Focus Bear assists you to stay in deep work by blocking websites and apps that are unrelated to your chosen focus mode. Life's not all about work though. You'll be prompted to take regular breaks to rest your eyes and stretch your muscles. At the end of the day, Focus Bear helps you switch off. Work-related apps get hidden so you can unwind and sleep well. Check out the app by going to focusbear.io. Welcome to episode number 49 of the Focus and Chill podcast. We're lucky to be joined by Denise Lim today. Denise is a PhD student at Griffith University, where she is currently investigating factors which contribute to academic motivation amongst intellectually gifted students with ADHD in secondary schools, a population she is extremely passionate about given her lived experience and challenges during that time. Denise has completed a Bachelor of Science with a psychology major, her psychology honours, followed by a graduate certificate in educational research, which provided her with the foundation for her PhD. In 2022, she worked with a team at the Matilda Centre at the University of Sydney to conduct the world's biggest umbrella review of COVID-19 and mental health outcomes, which was published in March 2023. When she's not researching, she enjoys spending time with her 2 guinea pigs, Squashi and Squishi, has won multiple state and national titles for chess and table tennis, and recently ranked in the top 10 for speed jigsaw puzzling in Australia. Welcome to the show, Denise.
Thanks so much for having me on, Jeremy.
Yeah, really excited to talk with you. Denise and I met at an ADHD conference a while ago, and I'm really keen to hear about your backstory in terms of how you became aware of your neurospiciness.
Yeah, awesome. It was funny. We actually met on my birthday when I attended a conference, and in Spicy Nature, I was like, what's the best way to spend my birthday? Oh, with a bunch of other people who have ADHD as well. So it was fantastic. And then we had a great Jeremy and I had a great chat there. Now, in terms of my experience with neurodiversity, I prepared for you a little PowerPoint sort of like presentation. Would you like to have a look?
Yeah.
Yeah, so what I've spicily put together is a percentage of grades by different grade bands and each year. So I dug up my school report starting from around grade 2 and straight through until last year's university grades. So if we go to the next slide, on the left here, you'll be able to see from grade 2 to 6, we had, A's, B's, and C's. So it was mostly, would be sort of student, had a couple of A's and C's sprinkled into there, but never sort of dipping under into, the 4s and the 5s, or nothing that was, below average. This was probably the first sign of being twice exceptional. We have this big range of performance through here. So on the next slide, so in the orange on the left, we've got some grades in high school. And high school went really well for the first 4 years until something called year 11 came along, where there was this really big increase in demands. And so grades and things started to fluctuate a lot more from there. Awesome. Now, this next one's really interesting. So if we just have a look at this grey sort of section at the bottom here. Thanks, Jeremy. You'll be able to see the overall grade and the effort that was put in. So deemed by my teachers, I was putting in 1, which was the top effort rating, 5 was the lowest. So I was putting in the most amount of effort possible for this subject. Now, if we look at the overall grade, we're sitting around Bs, B pluses, and a couple of A pluses into there. However, the first key message of today is that an average really doesn't tell the full story. If you look in the higher sort of section or part of the table, you'll see that a B plus in English was comprised of marks between an A straight through to a B. A B in maths methods, for example, if we go across one, ranges from an A through to a C plus. And we see a similar trend going throughout as well. In chemistry, we've got all the way straight from an A plus to a C. Something interesting pops up in German here, Jeremy, where the overall grade was actually a B plus, but can you see a B plus anywhere
Nope.
in there? No, right? There was 3 A's and A plus, and maybe I had one bad day, right? And suddenly became a B plus average student. Right? We go across and we see for further maths and psychology, we have A pluses as average there. At the top as well, the idea of a subject being compulsory or voluntary, as in the ones that I picked versus the ones I was made to do, also seems to make a big difference there. The second semester shows a very similar trend where, again, in English, we have a B plus average, not a single B plus in sight for any of the tasks. Right, we keep going across. Chemistry didn't do so well in that time. Again, in German, a B average, not a single B in German. There was C plus, B plus, and A, and so forth. So this really diverse sort of like profile of a twice exceptional student who's, shows really high ability, but then maybe has some learning challenges as well. So yeah, it's something for maybe like educators, and even if there's maybe future adolescents watching this, to show that, this big giant like grade profile is not well represented by an average at the bottom. There's really a lot of things going on here.
Yeah. And do you reckon, was this a different type of assessment, like the one here in German where you got an A for this one and C plus for these ones? Was this one like oral and this one was written, or do you think it was similar assessments, but just on some days you did really well and on other days you didn't do well?
So I tended to do a lot better on any oral assignments. So anything in English and German, and this was straight throughout high school, I would do really well in oral presentations. Nothing ever dropped below an A or an A plus. And I later came to a realization that this was likely because the way my brain works is that when you sort of think about an idea, you then like put it into like sentences, and you can speak those things out. When you have to like narrow down sentences into words, you then lose a lot of the depth. Sorry. And so I found in a lot of written assignments, so chemistry, for example, is very theoretically heavy, had to read a lot of textbooks. And later on in English, I realized I don't think I ever recall reading the full English novel. I got by using Spark Notes and different summaries, could sort of, skate by with some basic knowledge and things like that. But I loved oral presentations and loved speaking, so I often did better in those.
Funny, the opposite of me. I did really badly in the oral presentations and good in the written ones.
Oh, there you go. We should have been work buddies then. That would have been great. So this whole thing culminated in an NATAR that did not touch 90. In fact, I tell people I finished with an ATAR that ended in 9.95. They go, wow. And I tell them it started with an 8, and they're like slightly disappointed. But that was what I finished up with. And ATAR's not everything. I have a scholarship now to do my PhD, so a lot of it has to do with your interests and motivation, and always still time to like improve and go on from there. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's
So
interesting to, in terms of the increased demands in year 11 and 12, what sort of increased demands do you remember from that time? I also remember being really stressed during that period.
Yeah, the workload definitely got heavier, and there was now pressure on performing well, because these results started to be, like documented basically, and they started adding into your NVC or HSC results. So I think there was a lot more, pressure to perform during those times. Whereas before, there were a lot more electives. It was more doing things for enjoyment. Now there became subjects that were like compulsory to, do those to then get into university. And without those, you couldn't move forward. So Yeah, that was how I ended up.
Yeah, and probably more high stakes assessments because I guess in earlier year levels, maybe there are some exams, but there's really high stakes exams in 11 and 12. How did you cope with the exams?
Not well. We talk about ADHD as a difference, or Russell Barkley discusses it in terms of a difference between knowledge and performance. So, like,
Mm,
there was a really good quote which was about how it's not about it's not about knowing what to do. It's about doing what you know,
mm,
right? So I never had an issue with the amount of like sort of like knowledge and acquiring knowledge. It was always about being able to output yeah, what I knew. And you'll be able to see a bit more of that on the next slide or two as well, where we enter in the world of university. So we start off here in 2018, first year in, couple of like HDs, couple of 2As, you know, a couple of passes here and there as well. We move into second year where I had ran into some things with some mental health issues as well, and so that took a hit on some of my marks. And then we sort of picked back up a little bit in 2020. So
mm.
at the end of 2020 was when I actually got diagnosed with ADHD, and that was yeah, after I got my bachelor's already. And then moving on into 2021 and 22. Um,
Wow,
I'm very
huge
open.
difference.
Yeah, I'm very open about talking about my journey with meds. So I started in December of 2020 and have been on them since. Like we just crossed 3 years
Mm,
now. And so, you know, we had green bars in all of the previous graphs as well. It was not like I was never able to achieve, you know, scores between 80 to 100. However, they became a lot more consistent. And I think the final image really puts it all, yeah, really puts it all together.
mm.
So in a case of pre-diagnosis, this little dot here, this poor little biology, this is what this bottom outlier happened when I had not stepped into a science lab for about 3 years, had no idea what a microscope was, or like how to use it, went into bio on the first day and was like, oh my gosh, like it's like 120 lab stations, you know, still managed to pass it in the end, right? We see a whole range of scores here between 61 through to 86. This was just all of my undergrad marks. And then the
Mm.
final one, the orange one, is like post diagnosis and on meds as well. Now, you may argue, did I get smarter? What do you reckon, Jeremy? Like, does +1, did I get significantly smarter?
Seems like you had the green bars there, so I think you had the smarts within you already.
That's right. And so when we go on and have a look, what about more consistent? Would you reckon? Would you
Yeah,
say this is a case of
definitely
consistency?
those error bars are a lot bigger here. Is there a difference in like you were doing your honors where there's a lot more autonomy and freedom and maybe the grad cert was something that you really wanted to do? Was there a difference in what you were interested in compared to your undergrad?
I
Fewer
think there
compulsory
were,
subjects?
yeah, there would have been multiple factors that would have played into it. Definitely my interest in the subject would have helped as well for that.
Hmm.
But in part still there was a lot of knowing what to do, but then not being able to like, yeah, put it out and onto the page. So I still struggled a lot with writing and only really hit my academic writing stride probably in like second semester of honors where we had to start putting our thesis together.
Hmm.
So yeah.
Hmm. Well done. That's huge change and big testament to the power of learning about your brain and getting treatment.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
Hmm. And since then, you've really specialized in, I guess, ADHD. Can you tell us a bit about what you're doing in your PhD?
Yeah, so at the moment, I'm leading up to confirmation, which is your 12-month milestone. I'm using different tools to investigate and measure motivation. So specifically, I'm learning about self-determination theory, which is this big theory about like human motivation. And we've got three basic psychological needs. So the first is autonomy, right? People want to be in control and have volition of what we want to do. Second one is competence. We want to feel like, you know, we're successful and yeah, successful in our pursuits. And the third, like basic psychological need is relatedness. So this refers to us wanting to have close connections with people, and not just multiple connections, but meaningful ones as well. So because it's a motivational theory, I plan to use these 3 basic psychological needs a bit as a like a proxy for motivation, and then examine what that looks like in intellectually gifted kids with ADHD in secondary schools.
Hmm. And in your bio, you talked about how it's a subject close to your heart. Do you feel like if your teachers and educators had been aware of that motivational theory, that they might have been able to help you more?
Yeah, for sure. I think so. A lot of it was, I don't think people realized that um, people seem to have this very binary and black and white view of you can either be intellectually gifted or you're going to have a learning disability and need support. There wasn't anything that existed really for people like myself who now, in retrospect, realize that they were both. So I would often have, friends and teachers being like, oh, you know so much and you show all of this in class, but then in tests and things like that, none of that knowledge ever came out. Or the most often or common one I would get was, oh, you're very smart, you're good at chess. Why can't you do X, Y, and Z? I'm like, it's completely different ball games. So yeah, improving
Hmm.
teacher knowledge and understanding would be great.
As part of your research, is the goal to come up with some strategies and interventions, or is it looking at what interventions are already out there and see which ones might be most effective?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the end goal would be to design something that's very personalized for the
Hmm.
student, right? All twice exceptional students are going to be gifted in one or more domains and have one or more coexisting disabilities. They may be neurodivergent
Hmm.
and things like that. So often because we get multiple comorbidities, including myself, you've got ADHD plus a lot of other things that go on as well. Um,
Hmm.
Doing research with the population that's only strictly gifted kids with ADHD, well, you're going to lose out on a whole lot of people if you provide exclusion criteria, such as all the learning disorders, mood and anxiety disorders, autism spectrum disorder. So we're going to be, or the aim is to be including all of those like people, regardless of those like multiple comorbidities within the study as well. The baseline group will be gifted kids with ADHD, and then we'll have like sort of sub-analyses and then hopefully be able to pick up on some trends to then, create sort of like tailored interventions for those kids. So if we find out that through this measurement or this tool that, someone may be feeling really low in, have like very high autonomy frustrations, they're not feeling like they have a choice or volition in what they do. That would have been me a lot in
Hmm.
high school as well. In fact, for all of the elements, to be honest, high autonomy frustration, because, had to do 3 subjects, really didn't want to do.
Hmm.
High competence frustration, because try explain to a teacher that, or the teacher knows you're smart, but if you're jumping from an A to a C plus to another A to another C plus, they're like, what's going on? So struggling to feel like I was competent in high schools or like living up to my standard was really, really
Hmm.
hard. And then the last one was relatedness. Like I didn't feel like I had many peers in high school. Not everyone's going to be, competing at a state and national level for not one but 2 disciplines, and then trying to, have time to socialize and make friends at school. So that was also really tricky as well. So all of those things I reckon contributed. And so the
Hmm.
idea would be if we can find and target those things and help provide that kind of tailored support to that student, as I said before, if they're high in autonomy frustration, we're going to try and give the child a bit more or the student a bit more autonomy in class. And then using that, have maybe some time point follow-ups and then see which see if there's any improvement, if there's any lowering in autonomy frustration and increase in autonomy satisfaction. So when we get that increase, it means the kid's more likely to be more intrinsically motivated. And so that's much more self-sustaining. So that's the
Hmm.
end goal. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. It feels like it might be helpful for everyone, even if they're not neurodivergent, to have more autonomy, because I think most people like that. Some
Yeah,
of
100%.
these universal design principles that could help if we had a way of improving relatedness as well. There might be a lot of people who struggle with social skills, even if they're not neurodivergent. Is there anything schools can do around that?
Well, they'll have to stay tuned, I reckon, in the next
Yeah.
2 or 3 years' time.
Get ready to read your
Um,
thesis.
get ready to read. That's right. I hope to eventually have something that's like a practical toolkit that teachers can apply, and it's going to be not only practical, but make sure that it can be used as well, like for, a range of students. Like, as you said, I think everyone's going to benefit from this as well. Like when you provide, perhaps like some written handouts, or if you have notes in different formats, that's not just going to help that one or two or the handful of neurodiverse students in your class, but it's going to benefit really the whole class as a whole. But the failure to provide those notes means that, some other kids may not be disadvantaged, but the kids who are neurodiverse, like, may be a lot more disadvantaged, right? So it's easier, much more when we're doing curriculum design, when you keep those neurodivergent kids in mind, and usually the stuff that works for them is going to work for everyone or most other people as well. And the stuff that, that's currently in place, things that work for the majority aren't necessarily going to work for the minority as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love it if it wasn't such a cookie cutter manufacturing experience of education.
That's right. Yeah. So we're trying to steer towards personalized education, but it'll be tricky, but totally up for it. Yeah.
I'm keen to hear about your off-work activities, including not just two disciplines, but also a third one now with speed jigsaw puzzling. How do you make time for all these hobbies, and what got you into each of those things?
So jigsaw puzzling, I got started with actually during COVID, and maybe even a little bit before then. I actually used it as like, it was one thing that made me happy when I had a bad depressive episode at the start of 2019. And so I would, was spending a lot of time alone and isolated, but puzzles sort of was very therapeutic. It gave me purpose and kept me really grounded. No pun intended, because I usually sit on the floor when I puzzle as well. So when I tell people, keeps me grounded in more ways than one. So that sort of took off. And then during COVID, online jigsaw puzzling came on board. The Australian Jigsaw Puzzle Federation was formed. And I started just doing puzzles initially for fun, and then it became into a speed sort of challenge. I've got a couple here. Did you want to have a look at my most recent projects?
Yeah, sounds
You
good.
can have a squiz. So I'm into difficult puzzles, by the way. So this is this is one of them. It's the Ravensburger challenge. It's all different things about Mickey Mouse. Absolutely loved it. What else do I have? I've got two that are just all like one straight, just all a straight color. So there's a pink one here. There's a silver one sort of here as well. Yeah, it's my kind of thing. Now, I recently got into ducks, and so I found this.
Was that the one that you won at the contest?
I did wear at a puzzle competition. And so we got to pick a prize. I ran straight to the puzzle store and was like, dibs on the ducks. And then this is one that I picked up at nationals that I'm currently working on now as well. So I'm about 60% done with this one, done most of the light brown areas, but you could argue all of this is brown, right? So
does it remind you of the microscope days from biology?
We don't talk about that. That was this is me getting my revenge on those scores. No, I think it's like a cheetah or leopard print or something like that. It's like an animal print, but especially the very technically difficult jigsaw puzzles I find, because as a baseline, my brain often requires a very high level of stimulation to get started, and so this kind of leads really nicely into when I'm getting like myself into a flow, like for work and things like that, because with ADHD it comes with a lot of like disrupted sleep, and so sometimes I'll have long naps during the day. But I have something that I do use, which is I will be usually jigsaw puzzling for a little bit, and then as I'm sort of like doing that, my brain's quite free to then think of other things in the background. And then once I start having enough of those ideas, we're in front of a computer, iPad, pen and paper, whiteboard, whatever it is, basically, to then that helps me get into the flow of working. Second thing that helps out as well is actually listening to my textbooks and things like that. Through a text to speech sort of like app. So as I'm listening to those, I might be puzzling at the same time. And then there's like a little bookmark option on this app called Voice Dream Reader, which one of our previous guests, Alistair, talked about as well. He introduced it to me. And we were actually classmates at one point, which is how I found out about which is how I found out about that particular app. So I'm currently listening to the Handbook of Self-Determination Theory, which is about 400 pages long, but it's great. I can just sort of bookmark things, and then as I'm listening through to it, I can then go back, and on my phone I'll see where all the bookmarks were, click on the bookmark, and it'll take me to that highlighted line, and then it'll remind me of the things that I was thinking of at that particular time.
Love it. Is the jigsaw puzzling, is it almost a form of mindfulness, the way that you're describing it, where you're having thoughts come into your mind while you're doing the puzzling?
Yeah, I find it, well, it's very grounding. Helps me to become like much more like centered. It'll slow down my brain as well, because you can't really just like poke and stab in random pieces, not on a very complex puzzle like that. So it's very hard to be able to guess on those. And so you have to be sort of quite disciplined to then, okay, pick up a piece, you're going to look at it, observe it, then find the right spot. So it's kind of training my brain to be less frantic and rushed at the same time as well. And so being very deliberate about when I pick things up and when I put things in. And if I find myself sort of just randomly poking at stuff, then we just take a pause for a little bit. And yeah.
Interesting. I might have to try it, because I have always found jigsaw puzzles very frustrating, and maybe it's because I tend to do the random stabbing rather
Random
than
stab method. Yeah. We do that at comps with the final bit of time. And in a team, we found the best way is take your hands off and only have like 2 people at the end putting those through, because you got 8 hands all over. It gets really chaotic. So
yeah.
yeah, that's right.
So those 2 things, are those your start of work routine?
Yeah, those things would be what I do usually before, as I lead into work. When I'm sort of in work, or when I start working, I've got 4 things which I thought I'd share that could be useful for other people as well. So the first, which I briefly touched on, was the idea of variety. Now, when I do my notes, I know some people like to keep everything in one spot and keep it all central. I've got a laptop that, a 360 laptop, it's touchscreen as well. I work on my iPad with an Apple Pencil. We've got whiteboards, notebooks, phones, sticky notes, all that sort of thing. So rather than restricting myself to one form of, like having to put all the information out in just one modality, I can have things separately. And my supervisors have been great, because we've got neurodiverse members in my team, and they've got family members who are also neurodiverse. They get it. So I can just snap a picture of my whiteboard, upload it to our meeting notes on Teams, and they're super happy because they see I'm actually putting out work. And it's not all just about how many paragraphs and things you've written. The second one is movement. Now, I'm currently on a chair that's got a bit of like a curved stool. It's got a bit of a curved base on it, so it's not like totally flat. So that allows me to sort of move around a little bit without spinning in circles on a wheelie chair or anything. One of my favorite things I used to do while I was down in Melbourne was actually sit on the trains or at the train station, and I would just ride the trains back and forth, and I would set a goal, right? From the start of this station to the end here, all right, I was going to mark 2 papers, or I was going to write this many words. And so I had a time, right? Like it was like a race. It was like a competition in my head. And at the end of that line, often at Melbourne Central or Flinders Street Station, we'd stop and get bubble tea. Then we'd go to the end of another train line, find something fun to do there, grab something there, and come back. So there were little rewards that I set basically at each different spot. And because there was a fixed time, like you knew you would arrive at the station at this time, whereas you knew you had 20 or whatever, however many more minutes, you'd have to fly. And so you get, little rewards basically at the end. And they were some of my most productive times. Like I remember studying for a statistics exam, just back and forth in the trains. I wrote a lot of my honours thesis at the train station as well. And had, one of my stats lecturers, he wrote his entire PhD thesis while just at the train station.
I love that. I'll have to try it.
Yeah, because it gives you movement. I think something about trains as well for neurodiverse people. There's there's order, there's structure, there's predictability, and for me there's some movement. You can see scenery and there's light. So it works out really nicely. Third one was about gamification. So when you create games or little rewards and tasks and stuff at the end, makes things quite fun as well. So when I was doing assignment marking, we'd have a checklist of things on the side, tick it off, go and get a bubble tea once you finished picking those things off. And then the fourth one, which I know a lot of ADHDers use already, is body doubling, right? So we're doing, I think back in Melbourne it was a lot easier. I had friends there in a car. We were able to, either go to someone's house or just be on Zoom. And we do these sessions called Shut Up and Write or Shut Up and Mark.
Oh, yeah.
And so we would just sit online on mute. You'd be able to see the other person, they could see you, but there was no talking. One time someone shared their screen as well. It's like, hey, can I just share my screen so that I know you can see it. Don't care if you read it. I just want someone to know that it's there. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to keep writing. Worked out really nicely. So, yeah, those are some tips that I have for other people as well.
It's funny looking at those techniques in retrospect, because I remember I started a PhD ages ago, and I remember Shut Up and Write. And at the time, I thought it was a great idea without realizing why it was so effective for me. And now it makes sense from the body doubling perspective that it does help so much. And I love the idea of working on trains. I often find they're very productive for me as well. There's a book about ADHD where the author got heavily criticized because he talked about how he was super productive on planes, and people were saying he's so elitist, who can afford to buy a plane ticket just so he can write a book. Because that was one of his pieces of advice, that if you've got something hard to do, jump on a plane. I think your strategy is a lot more approachable. Everyone can afford to go on a train back and forth.
On a train or a tram, usually. Yeah, that's right. On that note, when I do have to fly, I am also extremely productive as well. So there you go. Can't afford a plane ticket every time, but if it means hopping on a tram for $2 or $3, get to the end of the line, it's very much worth it. Yeah.
And do you turn your Wi-Fi off while you're on the train?
No, I have to hotspot because I'm usually I'm usually reading papers and researching while I'm on there. So hotspots on, for my laptop.
The next level. Download the papers beforehand and then no internet while you're on the train.
There you go. I'm not one to check social media because I'm very conscious of, if I'm on my laptop, I'm meant to be working. So obviously I'm not going to be on my phone checking other things because that's not the purpose of the trip. So yeah,
I guess that's another aspect of the multiple devices, that it sounds like you treat your laptop as sacrosanct, that you're not doing it for playing games online or anything like that. It's only for working. Yeah,
laptop is strictly for working, and then phone and iPad for bits of other things. I've had times before where I don't know if my laptop's died. I can find myself very productive working on my phone. You switch it on to do not disturb, you turn on airplane mode, and sometimes if I'm just refusing to sit still at a desk, I'll walk around in, back in Melbourne, I used to have a backyard, would pace around in the backyard and just type away on my phone. You get, about 1,000 words down just in an hour of pacing around. So it's like you do what works for you. I know some people keep their devices very, very separate. I think for me, it's just my laptop. Everything else is, free game.
And the final tactic that you haven't mentioned yet is taking breaks. So we're going to take a quick break and we'll be back with you shortly.
Hi there, Focus and Chillers. Are you ready to supercharge your knowledge in the realms of creativity, tech, and psychology? Come check out my fortnightly newsletter. In each edition, you'll get quick wins and actionable takeaways that you can put into practice right away. If this sounds like you, I'd love to have you as a reader. Subscribe for your fortnightly dose of insights. The link is in the show notes. And now, let's get back to the show.
All right, we're back from our break and we have another guest who has come along.
This is Squashi.
Hello, Squashi.
Squashi.
Getting fed.
He's almost turning 5, and it's almost dinner time. Speaking of dinner and nighttime routines, obviously looking after these boys is part of what happens at nighttime. And I feel like since having pets, it helps to provide you another sense of accountability as well, because these little guys rely on you to keep them alive and happy and fed, to change their cages, change their mats and stuff, and keep the cage clean. So
does it have to happen at a certain time, or just once per day is enough?
Yeah, just once per day. They get fed twice a day, and so it's also a little reminder for me as well. When you feed them, you're gonna also feed yourself, which is really, really good, because as someone who openly chats about meds for ADHD, for me, and I know it goes the opposite way for some people, can really suppress your appetite as well. So I find that first thing when I feed them, it provides a reminder for me as well. You got to eat something at first before you take meds. It works out.
Yeah.
And it works out really nicely. Yeah.
Is there anything else that's part of your wind down routine?
I will jigsaw puzzle for a really long time until I get tired, and then only will I go to sleep. I know some people keep their phones away from bed as well at nighttime. I am a massive fan of Big Bang Theory, and I've watched and listened to all 12 seasons at least 12 times by now. So at this point, it's become like white noise for me. And so when you know the patterns, when you know what comes next, and it's predictable and all the laugh tracks, like it's extremely calming for me. And within an episode, I'm off. I'm knocked out already in bed. So um yeah, that's one thing that that's one thing that helps for sure.
Interesting. Yeah, another guest, Brit, also did the same thing with Friends, and I guess it's
Okay, they
that.
did.
Yeah, when you've
Oh,
watched
something
it that
about
many
like when it's
times.
repetitive. Yeah,
Yeah.
and you know what's coming, it's predictable. That's why I think at one point when I was in my honors, um, my iPhone was just like, you've been on your phone for 14 hours, which is an increase of whatever many percent from this day. And I was like, I must have been so productive because the Big Bang Theory would have been there in the background. There's no way I could have been scrolling social media for 14 hours. But I was like, my goodness, I've almost gotten through a whole season of this by the end of the day. I was so productive. So
I
I think
used
there's
to do that
something.
with podcasts and audiobooks, listen to it while I was doing tedious work, especially for programming, doing design work. I find that very mindless for me, and having extra stimulation actually helps me to stick to the task, which feels ironic because normally the advice is don't multitask, but sometimes it can be helpful.
Correct. Yeah. So for me, it's like doing jigsaw puzzle. It's listening to, audiobook, loving like all of Brene Brown's stuff as well, especially when I'm doing my household chores. Like
Ah, yeah.
voice is so calming. It just keeps me engaged. You feel like you can do anything. Like,
Mm.
and so we've got a big house task to clean, which will be after we do this podcast. Brene Brown will be, back on again for sure.
I love it. Yeah, I found that was an effective way to, I think it's sometimes termed temptation bundling, where something really boring is coupled with something really fun, and that makes it a lot more enjoyable.
Yeah, awesome.
What resources do you find most helpful? We spoke about a few different types of them. You've got some audiobooks, some apps, some sensory toys, some pets.
Oh, yes, speaking of pets, this little guy's hungry, so we're gonna put him back. We're gonna say goodbye to everybody.
Yeah,
Goodbye to
we'll be.
Squashi. On the note of uh sensory toys, come in many different forms. My favorite sort of brand that I'm getting things from at the moment, they're called Kaiko Fidgets, so Kaiko. It was designed and founded by a family with two kids who are neurodiverse named Kai and Kobe, hence they put together the names, they get Kai and Ko. So Kaiko Fidgets are amazing. They often come to some of the ADHD events as well, and they're always super busy and they always have new things for people. This is one of my favorite ones most recently. It came about last week or so. It's a little hand roller. So people can kind of like roll it around this
I've
way.
got one of those too, but not as colorful. I love the colors on yours.
Oh, you have to get so yeah. Best thing about Kaiko, they do oil slick ones, which are just amazing. There's a mini little cog, which is like also it functions as like spinner, but
Hmm.
it's extremely quiet and very, very discreet as well. So this comes around. Let's see, come around with you. There's another little cube. This guy's also a spinner,
Hey.
but hey, it also serves as a great paperweight. So this guy sits on my desk, usually at uni, as well. Uh, this is one of their little flappy squishy ducks. Unlike most other sort of like fidget toys that collapse really easily, it's got a lot of like tension sort of thing like to it. So there's a lot of like firmness and pressure with this guy. So this is
Hmm.
Felipe, the fluffy duck.
Hmm.
Um, and then the other great invention, an upgrade on a spinner, was you can see this got a traditional spinner is either 3 or 6 points, right?
Hmm.
And this is a brass one. It goes really, really smoothly here. However, the best part of this is that you can unscrew sections of it and
Ah, and
actually
then.
changes the whole weight,
Hmm.
the direction, it changes the weight and the feel of the spin, so it can provide something a little extra.
Mm.
as well. And you can obviously, screw these on and off. So yeah, those are absolutely some of my favorites. I am usually surrounded by soft toys and fluffy things, so much to a point where during COVID, I created myself a study tent. I pitched a tent in the middle of my room, filled it with blankets and soft toys and things because I needed a space that was separate from studying in bed. So I remember
Mm.
writing one of my best academic works just from over 2 5-hour sort of hyper focused stints. And ended up finishing with a H1. So there you go. You
Love
do
it.
what works. Do what works for
Yeah.
you. Yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes light and stuff can be an issue too, right? So I like to really work in the dark. In my room, I have like fairy lights set up, so usually the main light's not on. Fairy lights will be on most of the time because warm light is a lot better than just bright light. Yeah.
Mm. I love it. And you also set up a whole enclosure around your desk. I remember you saying with core flute and whiteboard paint on one side. Thought that was
Oh,
really impressive too.
yes, that's right. So I went to Bunnings, set up a double-sided core flute board, like MacGyvered some shit, and basically stuck whiteboard, like adhesive whiteboards you can pick up at Officeworks, put it on all of the ends, and it allowed me to like sort of like flip and turn and change ideas around. There was a line of clips on the top, so I would clip on important documents and things like that on there. And obviously there's a giant like 3-person sized beanbag as well in my office. So the spicy brain needs a nap, and when it does, it has the chance. There's a weighted blanket, there's a little pillow, and a three-seater beanbag there. So that's from when I need a brain break. Because
Mm,
yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
And the other resources you mentioned, the app, how do you spell the voice dream?
So it's just VOICE and then DREAM. So when you use that, you can download PDFs basically into there, and I will listen to textbooks, listen to research papers. It allows you to highlight parts of text. You can change the rate of speech, and there's multiple different speakers. And the best part for this, not an ad, is that you pay for it just once off and never again. So,
Hmm.
I've had troubles or difficulties with concentrating on reading and like just not comprehending things over. So to know that I have this on my phone and on my iPad, like that will be there for a very long time. I won't have to pay for multiple annual subscriptions because
Hmm.
uni student life. But
Hmm.
yeah,
What speed do you normally listen at?
I'm in about the mid 200s. So I've heard Alistair listens to like upwards of 700 words a
Jeez,
minute.
per
And
minute.
I'm just like, wow, okay, I feel like that might be, that might start to creep into like sensory overload, just so much coming in at one time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, um,
Hmm.
yeah, about the mid 200s is where I usually sit. Yeah.
And the default speed is probably 100. So you're
So,
cranking
yeah,
through it
so
pretty fast.
yeah, that's right. And and brain needs something fast to kind of keep moving. It needs something stimulating. It's gonna keep going.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
yeah, find stuff that works for you. Yeah.
Hmm. Love it. And you mentioned Brown's audiobooks. Are there any that you've particularly enjoyed?
I really liked Atlas of the Heart. I think it's one of the most recent ones.
Hmm.
And then I've got a couple lined up from Daniel Kahneman as well. I have his hard copy of Thinking Fast and Slow, but then realized I wasn't retaining stuff from having the hard copy books, so I just listened to it, listened to stuff
Hmm.
like that instead.
Love it.
Now.
When your thesis comes out in 2 years, where can people find it? What's the best way to connect with you?
It will probably be on the Griffith University like thesis or dissertation repository. So you'll be able to
Hmm.
find me on the Griffith Uni website. I teach undergrad students like psychology and education there as well.
Hmm.
So that would probably be the best place to find me. Yeah,
Sweet. We'll link to your academic profile there.
yeah, we will do.
And finally, do you have any special words or asks for the audience?
Yeah, so I think the best thing would be just to like have a conversation about this like with people. So how I got into or how I started this whole investigation was had maybe a year and a half of being in psychotherapy for, some other things already. And then during COVID, when things were getting better, but mood and anxiety were getting better, but I still had all of these other like random symptoms. I'm like, sometimes we get a lot of comorbidity, so it's really hard to tease out what's what. But then I had a girl at uni that spoke to me. She opened up about having ADHD, and so had she not had that conversation with me, I don't think I would have, had the courage to speak up and continue to investigate and advocate for myself. Because in growing up last time, especially within my family and household and culturally, it wasn't something that we ever spoke about. So it was this whole journey. I've very much been my own advocate, but obviously had some great supports as well. Some good friends along the way, and I happened to have a chess coach who coached me for about 5 or 6 years, who was a psychologist, and my table tennis coach for the longest time was a neuroscientist. So, they were great people to chat to, and now I've ended up in psychology and education. So, definitely talk with other people, because if it wasn't for that one person, I don't think I would have, spoken up about it or bothered to investigate. So, things really fell into place after that, just like a puzzle.
Yeah, so important to not feel like you're the only one suffering from it and to hear other people. So thanks so much for sharing your own story, and I'm sure it's going to inspire other people as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, Jeremy.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Focus and Chill podcast. To listen to other episodes, jump onto podcast.focusbear.io. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, or you know someone who'd be a good fit, email us at team@focusbear.io. Otherwise, stay focused, stay chilled, and peace out.